I mean, eventually, the world will be divided into essential and non-essential, right? So everything that you need to survive is essential: food, groceries, fuel or whatever. And non-essential is that, whatever you till now considered as a snob value, or maybe, a thing that you can live without. Now comes a critical point, right? That, and this is where human minds are tested. Um, the definition of essential and non-essential, Varun, is very, very extremely personal, right? It is impossible to generalize it. And I'll tell you how. Some people would say, for me, water is not essential. For me, beer is essential. Some people will say, for me, riding a luxury car is not an essential. Non-essential is essential. I cannot drive a car which is not automatic because I'm used to it. I cannot, go anywhere without putting a kajal on because I just feel I look very pale. I cannot step out of my house wearing dull colored clothes because I think I look fat in it. I cannot, talk to anybody without wearing my favorite perfume because I just feel that, I'm not smelling good. It is so personal that putting a layer of, general human needs is virtually impossible, right? There has been an age-old jokes where, the princess says that, why give them, bread when there is cake, right? So that kind of became joke, that why eat bread when you have cakes. But it is true. Your definition of essential, non-essential is very personal, and it is taboo, right? So all of us are under the societal pressure to not open up our mind in the fear of somebody will come and crush us, that in the time of COVID, when people are suffering and thousands of migrant workers are walking home and getting crushed and, they're dying on the railway track, how can you really think about these things? But they will not talk about it, but you cannot drag it out of their minds, right? Especially talk about Generation Z, kids born after 1998. They are the internet generation, right? They're born with an Instagram in their hands, and if they've seen what's happening around the world. So for them, living up to their global standard of life is essential, right? Be it the internet, or be it the branded clothes they want to buy, or be it the PlayStation game they want to get into, engage with friends. So it is a very personal thing, and I think you cannot put a layer on top of it. And India will remain a country of demand, right? I do not know about infrastructure. I do not know about government policies. I do not even know about, bank lending. There's only one thing I know, Varun, that India will be a country of demand because of the aspiration. Because we'll always be at a stage that, we want to be developed. We'll never be a developed nation because we've reached a population scale where it's virtually impossible to, now discipline everything into a developed way of living. We cannot. So there's always this, North Pole star, which we'll be chasing all our lives, that we want to be better off and live like a Sweden or an American, right? That chase, or that wild goose chase, is always going to keep the demand burning. So the good thing in India is that maybe you start a business, and the policies are not in your favor, or the lending is not in your favor. The only thing in your favor is if the product is liked by people, there is business in it.
So what you're saying, is that there is still space to create a lot more brands and to build a lot more online businesses. But I'm curious, would marketing in general change? Because I would imagine there is an offline online element to it, right? And the offline being not just advertising and campaigns, but also the value that you show that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm primarily saying now that, it's like you define it, essential, non-essential. Even if it's essential, non-essential, and I want to purchase it, but the values of why I would wear it, where would I use it, how would other people see me in it, would that change?
There's gonna be a lull of about 6 months, I would say, where people will work on what the perception of other people. But again, they will go back to their carnal instincts. Everybody, the human instinct is that my demand and my needs are very personal, and I will fulfill it in any way possible. Self-maximization is the first virtue of being human, right? So 6 months, because there is so much media talking about COVID and there is bad news, there would be this lull period. Post 6 months, people will go to their basic instinct and they would want to buy whatever they want to buy. So that's like always going to happen. That is first thing. And the second thing is that, as I said, that demand, which I was talking about, right? Essential versus non-essential demand. There was a time when a lot of people moved out of poverty and they came into the middle class spectrum. and you could see a lot more smartphone sales happening, a lot more electronic item sales happening, right? And you could see this phenomena. Now people have to think differently, right? You were talking about marketing has to think differently. Yes, it has to. And I've been yelling my lungs out for the last 3 years that the traditional way of mainline marketing is dead and buried. It cannot be useful anymore, right? So when you go to large FMCG corporations, and I've counseled a lot of them, I've consulted a lot of them, in my job, they're still looking at definition of NCCS-A, NCCS-B, which is basically again built on a very archaic system of, if you have a refrigerator at home, you're NCCS-A. If you have an automobile or two-wheeler, you're NCCS-B, whatever. It is so archaic,
for somebody who doesn't know what that means, what is NCS?
So basically, SCCA or NCCS is basically traditional definition of what segment of affluence customer is in. So what earlier people would do is, anybody living in metro cities would by default get this A, or let me keep the words NCCS away. Those are all weird jingles. But say section A, right? Metro cities, and then non-metros would be B. Then people started seeing that in smaller cities in tier 3, tier 4, affluence started coming in. People are buying more automobiles. You see larger number of Mercedes Benz in a Ludhiana versus say a Bangalore, right? So then they said, okay, that's not the right definition. We'll look at the household goods own and the automobile own, and we'll start making definition of people, right? And basis that, the audience were clustered and they were divided, and then there were these research agencies who would come in the middle. They would pick a set of very handful of people to represent the larger base. They would do the surveys, and then they would put the characteristics. So for example, a research agency would go to Ludhiana and say, okay, let's do a survey about NCCS-A people. So they would pick up 11 people who own a Mercedes, and they would ask them, hey, how much are you educated? They would say, oh, I studied till college, first year or 12th. And then they would make it as a baseline standard that most of the NCCS-A people or SCCA people have not done college. So which means, there is no way you can sell an education app in those cities, right? Now, which is such bullshit approach to, a lot of things. The only truth today about a customer is the kinds of content she or he utilizes or watches. That there is nothing, no bigger truth than that truth. If there is a way you can understand the content consumption of your audience, what is her or his relationship with the media, you're pretty much on the right track to understand what he or she is likely to buy, right? For example, a lot of people say that TikTok is becoming big, but it's still consumed by people who are not going to become shoppers. It's still consumed by people who do not have financial independence or the affluence to buy online, right? Maybe that's a phenomenon.
TikTok is a very interesting example, right? Because ultimately,
but people said the same thing about, but the same thing was to be said about Facebook.
Of course,
the same thing was to be said about Orkut, right? It's the same pattern, right? The early adopters of each of these were ridiculed every single time, right? Because people in large did not understand it. I personally do not like TikTok, but I know that there is an audience or a customer base sitting there who are going to utilize 6 hours in a day watching TikTok.
Right.